Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ask the Expert session at Microsoft Ignite 2021. I hope you're having a great session so far and you've been managing to watch all of these on-demand sessions, the keynotes, even the virtual reality keynote that we had. I hope you're having fun with the new form of Ignite. Today, I'm so proud and so happy to introduce two of our experts on Zero Trust security to you. And we've got Nitika Gupta and Dilip Radhakrishnan, who will be able to answer all your questions about Zero Trust, especially as they relate to identity and management. Before I give them a chance to introduce themselves, I just wanted to go quickly with a few housekeeping rules so that we can get started quickly on the session. We have a team of experts in the background standing by to answer your questions on chat. So please use the chat to ask your questions. These questions will appear to all the attendees after they've been moderated by our panel of experts. We will be answering questions both on chat and also verbally. So I will be asking a few questions to Nitika and Dilip as we go along. And then we'll share a lot of questions with, a lot of resources with you at the end where you can get a lot more information about this. As always, please follow our etiquette. This session will be recorded, and kindly try, not to spam or post inappropriate comments in the chat. We have made an announcement with the Microsoft Code of Conduct, and I'm pretty confident all of you will follow that as well. And here it is on screen for those of you who would like to see it again. And if you've not seen it in any of these ATEs before. So with that housekeeping out of the way, I wanted to quickly introduce our panel of experts. Nitika, would you like to introduce yourself quickly?
Thank you, Mayank. Hi, folks. My name is Nitika Gupta. I am a program manager lead in the identity division at Microsoft. My team is responsible for our identity security capabilities like Azure AD conditional access and multi-factor authentication. Both are key parts of our Zero Trust story.
Thanks, Nitika. I'm Dilip Radhakrishnan. I'm a principal group program manager with the Microsoft Endpoint Manager team. My team is responsible for endpoint security and management, predominantly using the Microsoft Endpoint Manager product.
Thank you so much, Dilip. So with that, let's get started on our questions. So I see the first question is already here in the chat. So someone's asking, Nitika, this one's for you. Can the Zero Trust model extend to all my users, employees, partners, vendors, or are there any recommendations on the approach?
Thanks, Mayank. Zero Trust is an approach and a set of principles that can be applied to your entire environment. Thinking about it from a user perspective, it applies to your employees, your business partners, your vendors, and even your customers. At this Ignite, we are actually announcing the general availability of conditional access and identity protection for Azure AD B2C, which will allow you to now apply Zero Trust controls to your own customers as well. This is an example, and we have a wide range of capabilities which allow you to secure all kinds of your users within Azure Active Directory. In terms of the approach, which was the second part of the question, I would highly recommend checking out our Zero Trust page, which is at aka.ms/zero-trust. And there you can find resources like the maturity model, which talks about the different stages in the Zero Trust journey. You can find the assessment tool, which can help you understand where you are in your Zero Trust journey. And you can find deployment guides, which will help you as you start deploying some of these capabilities. Thank you, Mayank.
Awesome. That is great. Dilip, here's another one that probably would be good for you to answer. Someone's asking, what are some of the best practices that you have seen organizations implement when it comes to securing devices, specifically with Zero Trust? Do you want to share some thoughts on that?
So when we talk to our customers, a lot of them are in various stages of adopting the Microsoft Zero Trust maturity model. As you know, they're all transitioning from traditional on-prem based systems to either a hybrid architecture with on-prem AD and Azure AD, or they're all in the cloud, optimized for Azure AD and Microsoft Endpoint Manager in the cloud. So some of the best practices that we've seen is those customers that make sure that only trusted devices are allowed to access their corporate data. So this includes some of the customers who migrated from, say, on-prem group policies to more modern Intune based policies for doing compliance management. So they can specify, here is my desired state for a device. And as long as those settings are met, for example, it could be is firewall turned on, is antivirus signatures up to date. So those are the types of patterns that we see a lot of successful customers adopt to make sure that only those trusted devices get access to corporate data. And some of the customers who are more advanced on the optimal end of our zero trust spectrum not only do a compliance check to see if the device is meeting the desired state, but they also do additionally require that the devices are attested with a risk signal, like what is the risk on the device, whether it's a high risk, medium risk, low risk. For example, that can be done with our Microsoft Defender for Endpoint tool or through a whole bunch of third-party products that we have integrated within the market. So they send us the risk signal, and only those devices that are not just compliant as per Intune, but also are attested to be healthy and are risk-free are the ones that are allowed to access corporate data. So our recommendation is for those customers in this zero trust journey to make sure that you have some basic compliance policies, and then in addition, check for device risk signals.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Dilip. So switching back to you, Nitika, this question's about the MS Authenticator app, and I personally use it a lot on my Android phone. But the question is, can this MS Authenticator app be used as a passwordless login to a PC instead of using, say, Windows Hello or a FIDO key?
Good question. And just like you, Mayank, I use passwordless phone sign-in for passwordless authentication every day for my Microsoft accounts. And so the short answer to this question is not yet. We know that customers want to be able to use passwordless phone sign-in for PC logon in addition to Windows Hello and FIDO key, but it's not yet supported. It's something the team is aware of and is working on. The challenge here is that as part of the passwordless phone sign-in using Authenticator app, we have a code match experience where you see a code on the Authenticator app and you need to pick the same code from the sign-in page. And that experience is dynamic. The sign-in page needs to dynamically show you the right code, and you need to pick that code in the Authenticator app side. And that's where the big technical challenge lies, where we need to figure out how to render that dynamic experience during logon. And the teams across identity and Windows are working together to enable this scenario.
That is really good to know. So thanks for sharing some visibility into our roadmap as well. That always helps. Okay, let's see. Okay, so this is a question about. So a lot of people, I'm seeing, multiple questions on this. So I'm going to summarize them in one question, which is getting started seems to be a concern for a lot of people. I'm seeing questions from people that are small companies, people who are wondering about the budget, and zero trust seems to be a little bit intimidating or overwhelming for them. So the question, maybe Dilip, for you is, what are some of the ways that people can get started with zero trust? What areas can they look into first? Any recommendations based on your experience?
Yeah, no, I think that's a big concern some of the companies that are coming into this situation are experiencing. And if you saw on our website, we now also have a zero trust assessment kind of tool that walks you through, asks a bunch of questions and gives you recommendations and guidance straight away. So we definitely, if you've not had a chance to look at it, we'll refer to that for your information. The second thing is, none of these technologies are requiring like you to go buy additional products. It's most likely you'll be having all these technologies already available with your Microsoft 365 licenses. So it is more taking a look at where the gaps are using the assessment tools, and then looking at the recommendations that we provide, which is, it could be as simple as making sure if it's an on-prem product that you have, say, SCCM or systems in the config manager, how do you attach that to the cloud? And that way you can start getting immediate benefits from a security perspective, right? Same thing, I'm sure on Nitika, on the Azure AD side, you can share examples. If you're an on-prem AD or ADFS customer, how do you start the zero trust journey moving into the identities into the cloud?
Yeah, building
Sure,
on
Nitika.
Dilip's answer, right? One resource I would recommend is Microsoft Secure Score, where you can find all the recommendations from Microsoft around users, devices, and all the other pivots. So that can be a good starting point for you to evaluate which are these, which capabilities you want to deploy first, and we show you the user impact, the deployment challenge as well, so you can take that into account as you're planning your deployment.
Excellent. And I think that brings us to our next question, which is about some of the technologies that people already have. So we know that a lot of our customers probably already have Azure AD or Intune or Microsoft Endpoint Manager, and they may already have been using some of these technologies like multi-factor authentication or conditional access. I want to throw this to maybe both of you again. What, if you could just summarize quickly for people who may be new to it, what is the role of conditional access in zero trust? Something that maybe people are familiar with, but how do they think of that in the context of zero trust? Maybe Nitika, we'll start with you and then come to Dilip.
Sounds good. So I think I'll take us back to the principles of zero trust, right? Zero trust principles are, we want to verify explicitly, making sure that the user who's accessing the resources is actually the right user. So we want to require MFA, we want to verify the device that the user is coming from. The second zero trust principle is about least privileged access. So you want to make sure that the user has access to only the right apps under the right conditions, right? So if the user is not accessing resources from outside US, that access should be blocked. It should be all least privileged. The third thing is to assume breach, which is constantly monitoring the risk signals in your environment and having risk-based policies in place to basically respond to these attacks in real time. So that's where conditional access comes in play, right? As conditional access is the central policy engine, which can allow you to verify explicitly, ensure least privileged access, and constantly assume breach with risk-based policies. So conditional access is the zero trust engine for Microsoft, connecting users, apps, data, devices, and network, and providing you an ability to achieve those principles.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Nitika. And building on what Nitika said, if you look at the zero trust model white paper that we published, there is a whole section on the zero trust architecture. I want to zoom in on one thing because it's not just one technology or one piece of product from Microsoft or from a third-party vendor that can help you say you've achieved zero trust architecture. In our architecture document, we've identified 6 major workloads, which is identity, your endpoints, data, apps, infrastructure, and network. So all these are separate workloads, all provided through different management services within Microsoft, like be it Azure AD, Intune, or data DLP technologies from Microsoft 365 or MCAS, or our Azure network security story. So all those are different components, and all these tied together with a centralized policy engine, as Nitika said, and that's where conditional access plays a key role in making sure that the signals, whether it's related to a user risk from identity or device risk from Intune or a network risk from the network stack in Azure, all feed into the central policy engine. But conditional access is not the only component. There are other important components, like, for example, what is the SOC tools that are being used for providing visibility and analytics on your services. So I would refer to the architecture document in that white paper and say that conditional access is the core policy enforcement engine, and then there are a set of other services that kind of tie together into providing the zero trust architecture.
Got it. And speaking of conditional access, there is a question here about, and this is for you, Nitika, from an identity perspective, when will we support service principles as user conditions in conditional access?
That's a good question. It's a good roadmap question. I want to refer back to a question I got first, which was, does zero trust apply to all your users, right? And we talked about all the human accounts, right? Employees, business partners, vendors, and even your customers. Zero trust applies to all your identities, including your service identities as well. And that's where our team across identity and the company are working on enabling zero trust controls for service identities. What I can share right now is it's on the roadmap. Look out for announcements when on Azure AD blog. Yeah.
It wouldn't be an Ask the Experts if we didn't try to squeeze some roadmap information out of you. So we like to get you on the mat and get some of that information all the time. But I appreciate the answer. Thank you. Okay, so moving on. Okay, there's a question about Windows virtual desktops. I wonder how many of you are using Windows virtual desktops. It has seen a tremendous growth in the last year. And this question is, how does that, now that's become almost like another kind of a device, right? Another endpoint, just happens to be virtual. So Dilip, does Zero Trust apply to Windows virtual desktop as well, running in Azure?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So what we have done is taken the workload, which is your typical PCs, and especially in a COVID type situation where everybody is doing remote work, we've seen a huge increase in number of users using that for access to corporate data, right? So by hosting the WBD devices in Azure. And once those devices are part of our management stack, right, you enroll those devices just like you would do any other mobile device or PC into the Intune system. Same thing, the devices are registered with Azure AD. So all the conditional access policies that are already applicable to physical PCs are also directly applicable to the Azure WBD sessions as well.
Excellent. Okay, and we are at the halfway point, so I thank everyone who's been giving us questions, and hopefully this is inspiring more questions. Keep them coming. I did want to give a quick shout out to the actual session that this panel refers back to. So this is an Ask the Expert session for a complete session where Dilip and Nitika have done a bunch of demos, and they go into much more detail about a lot of these things. So if you haven't checked it out already, do check out the Zero Trust Proactive Approach to Cybersecurity session that's available on the Ignite catalog. So with that quick shout out and promotion for your session, I have a question for Nitika again. Oh, wow, this one's interesting. It says, well, can conditional access be used for highly sensitive accounts, such as enterprise admin or domain admin?
Absolutely. So I think those are the first set of accounts that you want to protect. So for thinking about your privileged accounts, there are a couple of things you want to think about. One is requiring conditional access for these directory roles that's available right now in conditional access, where you can require multi-factor authentication or device compliance or other controls and limit access for these roles. The second thing you want to think about is to use Azure AD privileged identity management to ensure there is least privileged access and just-in-time access to these permissions. So with privileged identity management, you can define that the user is eligible for this role, and they can activate this role, and once they activate, it will be valid only for X number of hours or days, depending on the company policy, and they'll automatically lose access to this role. And at the point of activation, you can also require things like manager approval in addition to MFA as well, and you will get enhanced auditing here as well. So think about using not just conditional access, but also privileged identity management to secure your privileged accounts.
I see, that makes sense. Thank you. Here's a question on something we've all been facing in the last 1 year for sure, and that's about BYOD devices. So maybe Dilip, this is for you. As we've gone remote, as we've started working from home, do you have some thoughts to share on visibility and enforcement for BYOD devices, or devices that don't belong to the company, but people are still using them to do company work on those devices?
Sure. So definitely, I think those companies that adopted our mobile application management stack, MAM, where we focus on protecting the apps and data instead of the entire device, that service has been growing a lot. It had already had a huge adoption, but even over the last year, we've seen a huge increase in the adoption of that service. So it shows that people value a lot of privacy on their personal devices. We do offer the option, and a lot of other customers have also gone on the path of they do MDM enroll the device and then add the DLP policies on Office apps and third-party apps on top of it using the Microsoft Application Management, the MAM story or App Protection story. But what we are also seeing is for those customers who value privacy for their end users also use only the app protection policies on their personal devices, be it iOS, Android devices. The additional thing that we recommend, and it's a more recent addition over the last year, is we have also seen an uptick in number of kind of attacks and vulnerabilities that show up on these mobile devices. It's no longer just like, hey, the devices can't be jailbroken or anything, but there is a whole variety of mobile attacks that we see, even as simple as like somebody sending a WhatsApp message and that somebody just opening and responding to that could potentially compromise the device. So that requires a different kind of risk assessment. So with Microsoft 365, with our Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, we introduced the mobile threat protection module, where we can now allow you to check for device risk posture, even when you're not fully MDM managing the device and using only app protection or MAM policies. So when you launch the Office app, Outlook or Excel or any app on your personal phone, we do a check to make sure if the device really having any risk, and if it's risky, it will be blocked from accessing those corporate applications on the personal device. We also have a integration with several of the third-party mobile threat defense vendors in the market. So based on your choice of whether you use Microsoft Defender for Endpoint or a third-party MTD solution, mobile threat protection solution, you'll be able to get that protection on a personal BYOD device.
Makes sense. And I can personally attest to some of this, as I'm sure a lot of us can. I've been using almost every device in my house through this past year to join a meeting on Teams or to do some work on any device I can find at the time, not necessarily tied to this space that I have. And it just feels good to be able to know that, okay, it doesn't matter what device I'm on, as long as I'm connecting with my Azure AD credentials, the data in my Teams chats or the data in my Edge is kind of safe, irrespective of the state of my device. So that totally makes sense. Awesome. I'm seeing a pattern here in these questions, and what it tells me is that passwordless is absolutely here to stay. So this one, Nitika, is for you about YubiKeys. And it's a little bit of an extreme question. The question is this the most secure login approach? I don't know if you want to take that and how you want to answer that one.
And I, just like you, I hope passwordless is going to be the norm.
Totally.
For years, like we've been telling customers that passwords are no longer good and pushing MFA, and now we have a better way. We completely eradicate passwords and can go passwordless. In fact, at this Ignite, we announced the passwordless general availability as well. So check out that announcement and learn more about all the new features that are lighting up. Going back to the question, I think I want to broaden the question. So we as Microsoft offer a wide range of authentication methods, right? Starting from the telecom-based methods, SMS and call, then Microsoft Authenticator app, which can be in notification mode or OTP mode, hardware oath token as well. And we have the FIDO security key support, Windows Hello for Business, and passwordless phone sign-in. And all of them have different security, usability, and durability models, right? And if you look at the most secure usable methods, you'll arrive at passwordless. And I think in the talk that Dilip and I delivered, we actually have a slide on the adoption strategy for authentication methods, and you'll see on the right, which is the best column, we have passwordless authentication method, which includes the security keys, as well as Windows Hello for Business and passwordless phone sign-in. So to answer the question, I think any of the passwordless authentication methods are the way to go in terms of the most secure and usable authentication methods.
Excellent. Yeah, great point and great answer. So Dilip, coming back to you, I know this has been a little top of mind for you lately, something about first line workers. So I know Microsoft has been really working hard on first line worker solutions. Microsoft Endpoint Manager and Azure AD both are working really hard on a robust roadmap for that. The question here is, how do you handle zero trust for shared devices? Because the person asking the question says, creating separate accounts for all your first line workers is challenging. So do you have early thoughts to share on that?
Yeah, no, I think what we're working on is a set of technologies around making sure that the existing information worker experience that we've built with conditional access, be it at the user multi-factor authentication experiences or uh, the device-based risk assessment and all those scenarios work exactly the same without having to create a completely parallel infrastructure for a shared device. Right? We definitely recognize the value and importance of it. And quite a few of the releases have happened at this Ignite related to this capability, and there's more coming in the next few months as well. Definitely shared devices. Our goal here is to make it seamless and make the zero trust experience as much as you get today with the information worker also on the shared devices as well.
Makes sense. Yes, and I'm personally I'm looking forward to it. I think we're going to have an awesome, more good stuff to share by the next Ignite. So this is a great question. So thank you for asking that question. We have about 4 or 5 minutes left in this session. I wanted to pause quickly to introduce or at least give credit to some of our experts in the background that have been answering your questions. If you're on the chat, you're probably seeing them answer your questions at a breakneck speed. I don't know how they keep it up, but I just wanted to quickly thank Charity, Clay Taylor, Matt Call, Asavri, Laura, Alexander, Mahyar, Mike Denoski, Jessica, and myself, right? I mean, we forgot to thank me. So my name is Mayank. I don't think I introduced myself in the beginning. So, well, my name is Mayank J or Mayank Jain. And I am a product manager along with Dilip and Nitika on this team. So it's been a privilege. It's been a pleasure talking to you at this Ignite, even though it's been virtual. By next one, I hope we are together and actually seeing each other in the real world. So with that little commercial break, I'm going to get back to our list of questions. I do see that these questions are, we have a long list of questions. We probably won't get to all of them, but keep engaging with us on social media, on the Ignite chats and all these other sessions. We are always happy to answer your questions. Maybe at the end, I'll also paste a link to our post-Ignite activities where you have another opportunity to come and talk to our engineers, and you can get more questions answered over there. Okay, so as we end this, maybe I can throw one last question for both of you, and it's a nice question to end this. So it says, if you had a magic wand and you waved it, what's the one security thing you'd want done for all your customers? So I'm going to let both of you wave your magic wands, but let's start with you, Nitika, and then Dilip, you get to wave your magic wand as well.
If I could make one thing happen, I would turn on multi-factor authentication for all our customers, and that will help remove 99.9% of the identity attacks because they are all related to password. And now that we have the passwordless GA, I think we should enable multi-factor authentication using the passwordless authentication method. So it's a great end user experience as well as high security as well. So if I had a magic wand, I would enable multi-factor authentication with passwordless authentication methods for our customers.
Beautiful. Dilip, what about you?
Yeah, great. For the devices world of zero trust, I would definitely say the magic wand is you have to go with secure by default. You cannot let devices come into your network without trusting them at some level. They have to at least identify themselves, right? So especially with so many BYOD devices and not just corporate issued devices, you need to know who owns this device, who's accessing it. So in terms of secure by default, my magic wand would be have a basic compliance policy. Bare minimum, it'll at least check to make sure your devices are enrolled and registered with both Intune and AD, and have some basic kind of policies around password complexity and encryption requirements on the device.
Beautiful. Yes, and I wholeheartedly do a +1 to both of those spells that you have cast upon our audience. And that brings us to these resources and calls to action that we promised we'll share with you at the top of this hour. These are really interesting things. The whole team has been working really hard on the zero trust resources. A lot of what Dilip and Nitika shared with you today is captured there in greater detail. For example, if you go to the maturity model paper, the first thing you'll notice there is that there is no no magical place when it comes to zero trust, right? Staying with that theme, everyone's at a different stage of zero trust, and the important thing is to get started. So in that paper, you'll really be able to identify where you are in that journey, and then what are some of the actions you probably want to take to move along that maturity model. The same thing with the zero trust assessment, which helps you realize that you probably are doing more zero trust than you realize, right? You probably have implemented a lot of the zero trust already, and it will make you feel good. I've spoken to customers that felt really good after taking that assessment. There were some questions on the budget and getting started earlier in this chat, and there's a business plan there as well, which I highly recommend checking out. Other than that, you've got our Twitter handles, MSFT Security and MS Intune, where we'll continue to have this conversation with you. So with that, I wanted to thank everyone, thank our expert panel, thank Dilip, thank Nitika, and it was a pleasure talking to all of you. I hope you all have a great Ignite. Bye-bye.